Hello, this is Mark Sabatella from Outside Shore Music. And in this video, I want to talk about how we can kind of parse into its different sections a typical piece of Renaissance counterpoint. This is a motet by Palestrina that we're looking at, but the same applies to a lot of types of music, a lot of masses and other forms of music in the Renaissance that use imitative counterpoint. And the important thing to realize is when you have this kind of counterpoint where the voices are coming in at different times and different voices therefore have the same lyric at different times because they're imitating each other, this works because A, the listener is expected to be familiar with the lyrics, and B, they get repeated enough that you can pick up a syllable here and there and kind of figure out what's going on. And so you can see that the lyric here, I don't really speak Latin, but I'm going to attempt to kind of pronounce this: Domine quando veneris, right? Those are the first three words. But then quando veneris, those two words got repeated again. And then judicare, or judicare maybe, terram, that's a couple more words. Then back to domine quando veneris, judicare terram, judicare terram, judicare terram. Right? And then finally we get some new lyrics. Ubi me abscondum, I don't know. Right? We get another line of lyric. So what's really happened is that first line of lyric, just looking at the alto part here, has been kind of repeated over and over again, but not even the whole line repeated, right? It was Domine quando veneris. He hasn't even finished the line, and he repeats quando veneris again. Then judicare terram, and then back to the beginning, Domine, and he repeats that whole line, but then just repeats the last couple words, judicare terram, right? So you get this repetition of individual little phrases within that line of lyric, and that's just the alto part. Then the soprano part does essentially the same thing. Domine quando veneris. Veneris, this one repeats that word. That didn't happen in the alto part, right? The repetition in the soprano is a little bit different. We have that that one word repeated, so we didn't see that exact repetition pattern, but just that first line of lyric, Domine quando veneris judicare terram, that's the entire first line of this motet, but it is stretched out over a couple dozen measures here before he introduces the second line of this particular, it's probably a psalm, I think, because most of the motets are based on psalms or other biblical verses. So this is a typical way that this music is going to be structured. We have this line kind of repeating over and over again, repeating in the different voices. We could look at the tenor and bass and see the same basic idea of stating that line, repeating individual words, stretching those words out with melisma, etc. And then finally, it comes to kind of a cadence at some point here, and then finally, the voices now start the second line, the ubi me abscondum voltu, blah, blah, blah. So, and then he's going to do the same thing there, have this imitation there, repeating the words over and over again to establish what's going on, using imitation, etc. So it really is like the first section of the piece is done right around here, where the first voice, in this case the tenor, brings in the next line. Actually, the bass comes in first, now that I see it. The bass is bringing in that ubi line first. And he does it while the other voices are still finishing the last line. So there's a little overlap between the sections, and that is also pretty typical. But ignoring the overlap of there, you can kind of treat this one section at a time, analyze the first section, then analyze the second section, and so forth. So this is the form of a lot of Renaissance music, whether it's a motet or a mass, even madrigals and secular music can follow similar principles of using a lot of imitation and repetition of lyric within a section, and then starting another section with a new line of lyric and more imitation and repetition.